Time Rifters is an indie first-person shooter currently available on Steam and developed by Proton Incorporated. The game advertises itself as one where you control all of your teammates. How do you do that? Well, I'm so glad you asked. In Time Rifters, you play through 3 chapters, which are broken down into 5 separate levels. When a level begins, you're able to choose from one of several weapons, and then you're thrown into a very Tron-esque looking game world where you have to shoot as many floating cubes as possible within a time limit, earning gold per cube destroyed. Obviously, it's impossible to destroy every cube yourself, so what Time Rifters does is have you replay each stage 4 separate times, with each replay featuring a different character with whom you can choose totally different weapons. Now, the catch to all of this is that as you move on to the next character, your previous playthroughs are still present, as all of your movements and attacks were recorded. Therefore, all of your progress you made in the previous playthroughs still carries over. So if in your first playthrough you spend all of your time taking out cubes to the right of the level, then obviously for the second playthrough you're going to want to spend your time on the left side, as your first incarnation has already got things covered. Make sense? It sounds simple, but it is actually a really neat idea and also quite complex when you think about it. When you come down to the 4th and last character for the stage, it can be really cool watching all of your previous playthroughs come together as you're all kind of working with one another. You're constantly trying to remember what your earlier movements were and also trying to think ahead as you choreograph all of your movements to maximize your score for each level. Visually, the character models and weapons lack much detail or definition, but the particle and weapon effects look absolutely gorgeous. By the time you're up to the 4th replay of a stage, the amount of stuff going on is incredible, and it runs with absolutely no slowdown. At least it didn't on my 780 Ti. There's some realistic looking settings and textures juxtaposed with the artificial environments meant to simulate a virtual reality construct, and it does look very appealing. It also has a really cool soundtrack made up of a bunch of techno and dubstep tracks that even have their titles pop up across the screen while you're playing. Now, as I said before, the main focus of the game, in fact really the only focus of the game, is about shooting floating cubes. And they come in 3 different types, each requiring a different amount of damage to destroy, and each dropping different amounts of gold. Gold earned in each stage carries across to all of your characters and can be used to upgrade your weapons at the start of each round, which in turn affects your base damage per second. Now, the weapons you've got fall under basic FPS archetypes like rocket launchers, assault rifles, etc. The most useful weapon is the flat cannon, which is a fast-firing assault rifle type weapon that launches projectiles out in a wide arc, almost like the spray from a shotgun. You can upgrade this weapon so the projectiles bounce off walls and also give your bullets an acidic damage over time effect, wherein you can just kind of spray away liberally at cubes in your general vicinity and just let them melt away as you move on to the next. This is by far the most beneficial upgrade and makes some of the earlier stages and chapters ridiculously easy. I did find that some of the weapons are a tad ineffective though. The rocket launcher deals tremendous damage, but it fires quite slow-moving projectiles, making it a bit tricky to lead shots as most of the cubes are rarely in a fixed position. Also, a weapon like the pistol isn't very effective even when fully upgraded. You have to frantically click the left mouse button over and over to keep it firing, and it just kind of pales in comparison to pretty much every single other weapon available. You lose these upgrades between chapters as well, and you don't get enough gold to upgrade everything, so planning your upgrades and your weapon build is essential. And that's pretty much all there is to talk about. The only other thing I can think of worth mentioning is that the game is very short. You're looking at about 90 minutes to 2 hours tops to get through the whole thing, and it is very casual in the way that you can't even really lose or die regardless of how crappy you perform. Even the so-called boss fights, if I can call them that, just let you run around willy-nilly, straight through a giant spider for instance, with absolutely no consequence. When you finish each chapter, you are given the option to play through them at your leisure in something called Experiment Mode, which lets you play through with unlimited gold, upgrading your weapons to the max level from the get-go. But this isn't really anything new, and once you've spent 10 or 15 minutes in this mode out of curiosity, you'll probably never play it again. I would have liked to see a few more chapters as well. I think 2 hours is a little bit short, and a couple more chapters would have done the game wonders, and also made it much more worthy of its $10 price tag. Overall though, this is a pretty cool looking game with a cool concept and a cool soundtrack. Yep, I just said cool 3 times in a row. The game also has Oculus Rift support, and I can imagine that being both awesome and vomit-inducing. It's not going to keep you hooked for weeks on end, but it does offer up a nice little distraction if you've got the evening or afternoon off and just want to shoot loads of digital cubes in a simulated environment with a chilled out soundtrack to set the mood.